everyone, and welcome back to our Nation's Voice interview series. I'm Charlotte Allison, the editor-in-chief, who is delighted and honored to be speaking with Fatou Baldeh today.
Hello, my name is Jerrie, and it is my pleasure to be here with Charlotte today to welcome this wonderful speaker. Born in 1983, she has dedicated much time and effort in her life to combating female genital mutilation and advocating for gender justice. Along with her role as a Gambian women's rights activist and a survivor of FGM, she is the founder of Women in Liberation and Leadership, an organization established in 2018 to empower women and girls in the Gambia.
Additionally, she's received numerous honors for her work, including being named a member of the Order of the British Empire in 2020, along with one of Times Magazine's Women of the Year 2025. The list goes on. All in all, it's safe to say her career has been nothing short of inspiring.
Starting broadly, what does being an activist mean to you, and how does one become an activist in your opinion?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. I speak to a lot of activists, and most of us, we don't actually refer to ourselves as activists, because when we start becoming activists, it's accidentally. So for example, I was a student when I discovered about female genital mutilation. Even though I am a survivor, I didn't see it as something that was harmful, because it wasn't sold to me or told to me as a practice that was harmful. So I didn't set out to be an activist, but through that journey, when I learned about female genital mutilation and how it affects people, I wanted to understand more, and the more I understood, the more I started asking people questions, the more I started speaking to people close to me, family, friends. I was more interested, and I realized I was doing more, and then I was being called an activist. So most of the people that I speak to, this is how they start. It's something that comes out, as a passion, and you keep following it. I believe that we are all activists in one way or another, because there is something that we care about, that we want to advocate against. So whether we admit it openly or we are called, most of us are activists, I believe.
Well, thank you. And being a survivor of female genital mutilation, a process with intentions rooted in misogyny and female repression, how do you believe this experience impacted your view on female reproductive health, women's rights, and your journey in activism?
Yeah. So growing up in the environment that I did, when people ask me where I get my feminist values from or advocating for women's rights, growing up I was never conscious that there was inequality for me being a girl, because the way that men and women are treated was so normalized that you just grew up in this environment where everybody behaved in that way and you didn't question it. But for me, one of the issues that I realized was that there were many women that were dying when they were pregnant and during childbirth. So I wanted to understand what were some of the factors that contributed to this. I wanted to understand in my society what was making women vulnerable, because I always believe that bringing life should be something beautiful. It shouldn't be that when you're pregnant you're worried whether I will make it or my baby will make it. And for me it was through that I went on this journey to find those solutions, and I discovered how female genital mutilation is connected to maternal health. Like studies have shown that women who are caught are more likely to have complications during pregnancy and childbirth. And that is one of the reasons that made me start advocating against the practice. But also the more I understood FGM, the more I realized that it was embedded in patriarchy. It was a form, in fact, I often say it was the strongest manifestation of the control of women and also gender inequality. And from now, most of my work is realizing that addressing FGM is not possible if you do not empower women and girls to realize their full potential, if you don't empower girls to realize what their bodies are meant to be for and how they're supposed to be protected. Because if girls don't know their rights, how can they challenge, how can they ask for those rights to be respected? So this is why a lot of my work goes beyond just saying to people in my community that FGM is wrong, but rather addressing those root causes of inequality that puts young girls in such a vulnerable position that communities think that in order for a girl to be complete, that she has to go through this horrific experience that would what make her complete. So a lot of my work is connecting FGM to these gender inequalities and also embedding FGM into the broader women's rights issues, women's health issues, rather than treating it as a tradition or a cultural practice. Because what that does, then you find a lot of people who want to advocate against the practice, but they're like, I don't want to offend them because this is something that happens to Africans and it's their culture and I don't know how I can challenge that. But if we see this more as an issue, a women's rights issue, which is a human right, then everybody will be more comfortable to add their voices like you are doing now.
Thank you for that valuable insight. Coherent with empowering women and girls, along as an influential figure who has worked both in Gambia and internationally, in your opinion, how can global efforts better support grassroots movements? And as its founder, what do you envision to be the progress that will be made on behalf of your organization, Women in Liberation and Leadership, in the years to come?
Yeah. So female genital mutilation is already recognized as a form of gender-based violence, violence against women and girls. There are a lot of international treaties that oppose the practice of FGM, like the CEDAW, the Convention on the Right of the Child, so many human rights instruments that have recognized FGM as something that is harmful. So it's a global health issue. In fact, one of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 5.3, specifically aims to eradicate FGM by 2030. But looking at the statistics right now, we know that 2030, it's not going to be possible. Last year alone, the estimates were by the end of 2024, more than 4 million girls will be cut around the world. That is unacceptable. We are in 2025, and there are already estimates of more than 230 million women and girls alive today who have been subjected to FGM. Those figures are unacceptable in this era that we are in, that we are still talking about this hideous practice that continues to affect women and girls. And the complications, both immediately that a girl is caught and in the long term, the evidence is there. People know how this thing affects women and girls. So yes, my dream is to see FGM ending. It may not be in my generation, sadly. I may not live to witness the day that FGM ends, because coming from my community, I know how strongly people still feel about the need to continue this practice. So for me, ending FGM, as I was saying earlier, also requires us globally, not just as a country or as a community or as an institution, fighting for women's rights. We are seeing that women's rights are regressing around the world, and FGM is not an isolated issue. It's part of that broader reproductive health issue that we are seeing. So one of my biggest fears is that now that we're seeing a lot of regression around the world, this issue that is seen as a tradition or a culture that happens to girls in Africa will be forgotten because priorities will be put on other issues. So at my level, and in many other countries where grassroots activists, survivors are leading the fight, we are seeing changes, baby steps, but we are seeing changes. So for example, in my own family, my niece, who is now 13, soon 14, is the first in generations in my family not to be caught. I am seeing people are changing. I'm seeing women coming up and saying that I'm going to make sure that my girl is not caught. But to help those women achieve that, we must engage the communities. FGM is such a complex issue that you need to engage men and women. You need to engage religious leaders. You need to engage policymakers. Everybody has a say on the issue. You can't engage one segment of the society without the other. We all need to work together. I was speaking to a couple of people earlier, and one of the things I was saying is that when I go into communities, mothers would say to me, I know this is bad, and I know how it affects people, but if I do not cut my girl, she will not get married. And in our communities, marriage is something that parents see as something that is valuable. So how do we then support men and boys to accept women who are not caught as women who are whole, who are part of the community, rather than people who are stigmatized because they didn't go through that experience? So a lot of the work of Will is reaching out to communities, engaging these different segments of society, increasing awareness, but also providing opportunities and showing our society that I was saying earlier that, again, when I do this, people in my village, people in my community would see, okay, she's one of us and she's been able to do this. There are opportunities for girls that a woman shouldn't just be valued as a commodity, as a marriage material, but women can do better. And when I am provided these platforms, for example, today, you are showing women from my community that, when you challenge social norms, when you make a difference, people realize and you contribute to the development of your country as well. So I hope that these are all issues that can contribute to that.
Oh, thank you. So you mentioned the importance of having a platform in order to show girls, especially from your background, that it's okay to speak up against injustice. And you just recently was named one of the Times Women of the Year 2025. What else do you hope to do with this platform and this recognition?
Yeah, thank you. For me, yes, one of my biggest prize is working out in my community and girls come to me and say, oh, we recognize you, oh, you are Fatou, I want to be like you. Because that's what I want to see. I want to inspire young women. I want to be a role model. Because growing up, that was something that I didn't have much of. I want to see more women doctors. I want to see women engineers. I want to see women doing what they want to do, and also setting the bar for young girls, because that is so important for young girls and women to have. So yes, one of my biggest desire is that these platforms, these recognitions that I am getting, inspires more girls to come and join the movement, not just fighting against female genital mutilation, but the movement to build women, like women building other women, women seeing women as examples and wanting to achieve greater things. That's what I hope to see. But also importantly is to use these platforms to amplify the need for more people to be aware of FGM, because it's such, imagine 230 million women and girls are survivors, yet you speak to many people, they haven't even heard about FGM. That needs to change, and the way we could change that is through these platforms. Whenever I am given a platform at the international level to talk about FGM, I am raising awareness about the practice.
Oh, thank you. And you also spoke about increasing trends of women's oppression across the world. For example, with the rolling back of reproductive rights, such as the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and in general government crackdown on sexual and reproductive health services. What next steps do you believe need to be taken in order to address these issues?
Yeah. I think it's important for world leaders to realize that, in almost every country you go to, women represent most, like half of the population. Any country that is serious about advancing have to give women equal opportunities. You can't hold back the majority of your country and expect to develop. The evidence is already there that when women are empowered, everybody benefits. I think advocating for reproductive health and rights need to continue. We need to amplify our efforts at all spheres, be it at the local, at the grassroots level, at the international community. As you rightfully said, we are seeing these rollbacks across the world, in the African continent, in Europe, in America, everywhere we are seeing these regressions. And I think as movements of women's rights, we need to also amplify our efforts and our work. We need to give each other spaces. We need to be each other's keepers. Like, we have to keep each other and give each other platforms to talk about issues that affect us, but also how can we use these platforms to say that these are our rights. It's not a privilege. These are our rights, and we are going to continue asking for them.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, that you have worked internationally and also in Gambia. You have done incredible work as well in the UK and in Gambia. And from your experience, what similarities have you noticed between these two countries? And in terms of culture and attitudes, what have been some shocks that have surprised you?
Yeah. So one of the greatest lessons I learned, especially for women who have moved into Europe or the Western world from African countries, when we move, we carry our culture, we want to keep our identity. And for example, the issue of female genital mutilation is one classic example that people tend to think that this is something that is practiced in Africa and it stays there. But you will not realize how many women who live in Europe, who are actually survivors of FGM, who need support services, but also some of these women want to, or families in general, not just the women and the fathers, want to hold on to those cultures that they feel are so valuable and are part of their identities. So when we talk about issues of FGM, when I was in the UK, one of the things that I realized was that these women come into these settings with a lot of challenges that they do not know how to confront within that society. So one of the work that I did in the UK was working with healthcare professionals, working with teachers and social workers so that they understand these dynamics, but also how to provide support to women and girls from such communities. One thing that is common, it doesn't matter where in the world you come from. Gender inequality is a reality. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how privileged you are. Society in many parts of the world are constructed in a way that men and women are treated differently. So it may vary and it may be more extreme in some parts of the world than others, but the reality of gender inequality is almost evident everywhere in the world. So again, this is why when I say fighting FGM, it's not just about FGM itself. It's about breaking patriarchy. It's about breaking that system that continues to hold women back from realizing their full potentials.
And regarding this, what has been the most challenging or the greatest barrier you have faced in making meaningful change and advocating for equality?
Yeah. So again, I'll refer to my experience on my work around FGM, which is a deeply rooted practice that has been going on for centuries. So for something that communities hold so deeply, so dearly, and it's part of their identity, when you're confronting those issues, then you are fighting a whole system. As I always say, that fighting FGM is fighting patriarchy. It's a system. So sometimes if I do work, I can get attacks from women, I can get attacks from men, but also for me, I am seen as someone who is going against my own culture and tradition. That can be challenging, and I know that's not just affecting me. A lot of women's rights, particularly fighting on issues around FGM and child marriage, we get these, we get called names, that we are westernized, we are influenced by the West. Those are, I love my culture. I love my identity as a Gambian, as an African woman. That's like my strongest identity. And I love so many parts of my culture. But what I am saying, the part of my culture that harms women and girls, I don't want to be part of that, and I want to end that. But generally, my culture is my identity, and I love it, and I want to celebrate it. So those are some of the challenges. And nowadays, violence against women, as you all know, it's not just physical, direct. Because we have all these social media platforms, people don't have to be next to you to abuse you. You know, I have had pictures of my family, my children, put online for people who want to silence me. But I know that it is an effort again to silence me as a women's rights advocate. As a mother, that is one of the most difficult things that I go through when these attacks are personalized to me and my family because of the work that I do.
So you mentioned the challenges that you faced in speaking out against societal norms and gender inequality. And of course, doing this requires courage and drive. Who or what has motivated you to devote your life to fighting against discrimination against women?
Yeah. Interestingly, my work is around fighting for women's rights, but my strongest support system that I've always had started with my father. Both my parents were not educated. I am the first in my whole extended family to go to school as a woman. I was saying to a couple of people again, my father, when he sent me to school, my uncles used to laugh at him because he sent his daughter to school. That's not something that was common. And they used to say to him, what are you doing? She's gonna get married. Why are you wasting your money sending her to school? That was the perception. But my father was like my biggest supporter and encourager and kept saying to me, you know, nowadays as a woman, if you are educated, you can be anything you want. And because my father was seeing other women achieving dreams and goals, and that inspired him to encourage his daughter to be educated. And fast forward, I am very lucky to have a very supportive partner. My husband is like my biggest cheer, my biggest support system. And again, this is why I honestly believe in positive masculinity. As much as we fight for women's rights, gender is about men and women. We need our male allies. We need to work with men and boys. So the reason I am able to do a lot of what I do, it's because I have a very supportive husband who supports my work. When things get difficult, he encourages me. I also have 4 boys. I was saying it's the cause of feminism. I've ended up just having sons, but I hope to raise them as feminists who will also support women's rights, who will respect women and diversity and equality. That's my hope, and I am very lucky to have a very supportive partner and a role model to my boys, my husband, and hopefully we'll create the environment to raise those boys to think differently.
Thank you. I'm sure that we can both agree education plays an important role in mitigating this issue. Mm-hmm. And in terms of that, you hold a number of impressive degrees, such as the bachelor's degree in psychology and health studies, and even a master's in sexual and reproductive health. How do you believe your education has helped transform and strengthen your belief and the way you approach this issue?
Yeah, education is key. I would not have been here if I didn't have that transformative education. As I said to you earlier, I was in a university lecture when I started understanding that what happened to me was wrong. When I had FGM done to me, it was done part of celebrating me as a woman, as a girl. I was told that this was what made me whole and pure. Through education, I discovered the harms that FGM have done to me. Even though I was experiencing these harms, I didn't know they had anything to do with FGM because nobody told me. So without that education, I wouldn't have had that light bulb to realize and make the connections between FGM and these harms. And I see this all the time at the community level, whether it's formal or informal education. When you provide that opportunity for critical thinking, people can find solutions. And I think one of the biggest weapons that have been used, especially for my context, Gambian, is depriving Gambian women of education. If I am 41 and I am saying I'm the first in my whole extended family as a woman to be educated, to reach high school level. And that trend continues in my country where girls don't have the potential because of different barriers to reach high education. At enrollment level in my country, we're seeing a huge number of girls getting enrolled at primary level, but most of those girls do not reach secondary level because of issues like female genital mutilation, child marriage, menstrual hygiene issues where parents feel that because we can't afford to provide sanitary pads for our daughter, she can't go to school, and that leads to school dropouts. So there's so many issues that contribute to this. But I believe that when girls are provided education, quality education, they're in a better position to make decisions that positively influence them and their future families. So for me, education is one thing that I always advocate for, because I have seen personally what it has done to my life, but also how I am able to protect my niece because of this transformative journey that I've been. And the beauty of FGM, fighting against FGM rather, there's no beauty about FGM, is that once you end it in a generation, that's it. If I don't cut my daughter, she's not going to cut her daughter. My niece is not cut, she will not cut her future daughters. That's what it takes. We know it's doable. We just need to amplify the work. We need to invest in educating girls about their bodies, especially reproductive health and rights is key. Women need to understand what their bodies are so they could make informed choices about what they do with their bodies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And to end our interview, we have one more question, and then we'll hand it over to these guys. What advice do you give to young people who want to make a change and as positive a difference as you have made and that you continue to make?
Yeah, I think firstly resilience, because this work can be very difficult. So when you go into activism or advocacy with the firm belief that this is something that I think it's wrong and I'm going to fight it, that helps you. But you must build a network. You must build friends around you. You must build a protective wall around you, because it's also very challenging. So there are so many different issues that are affecting people around the world, and we need more voices. We need more people caring. Many people care, but we need more people coming in the forefront and fighting against this injustice, because that's the only way we can make a difference.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned before how that in order for countries to advance, they need women to advance as well, and I found that very interesting because I actually watched a video on that last night. I forgot from which news channel it was from, but I think it's very true, and I wanted to ask, personally, what do you notice happens to a country when they see women advancing, or in Gambia and certain communities when women are advanced and taken away from female genital mutilation? What do you notice happens?
Mm-hmm. So there's so much evidence. For example, we see that women who are educated and empowered are in a better position to protect their children. So for example, even immunization, where in the African continent, where we see that most children, when they are born, they don't receive their immunizations, their vaccinations. We see that women who are educated and are aware are in a better position to do that, to make sure that their babies are vaccinated, are immunized. They are also in a better position and have the autonomy to make sure that their children are educated. You also find that women who are educated are in a better position again to be economically empowered. When women are economically empowered, they're in a better position to make decisions even around domestic violence. For example, women who are in a economically empowered position can move away from situations of violence. Whereas if a woman is entirely depending on the husband to take care of her and her children, she's not going to leave an environment that is abusive to her or her children. We've seen classic examples, but also when you educate women and empower them, they contribute to the development of the country, be it in the education sector, in businesses, when women are in that position, and then all society benefits from that. So we've seen that even in Africa, where countries are poor, you can see that countries that have better indicators of women empowerment are performing better in every sector. So it's the smart thing to do. Yeah.
You guys have any other questions?
Yeah, you mentioned that in Gambia a lot of people see that FGM as a part of their tradition, and I was wondering what approach would you take to explain to these people that like it's not a good part of the culture, and even if you will stop doing it, it doesn't mean that.
Many years, my mother, for example, if I told her about FGM, she would say, "Oh, Fatou, you've been through it. I've been through it. My grandmother and my mother." So it's a rite of passage. So for many women, and that's again, even though FGM affects women, women control the whole narrative, the whole practice. If you speak to the average men in the Gambia, they will tell you, no, I have nothing to do with this. It's a women's issue. So that adds another layer of complications, and I think this is why we are struggling to see a drop in the practice in so many countries. So when we go into communities, we keep experimenting, we keep using different approaches, because again, you could go to one community and the justification they would give you for FGM is different from the next community, or it depends on a tribe. So first you must understand the social norms and the factors that are making those people continue the practice before you develop an intervention. So we continue to use like the health model, where we say, okay, this is your culture, this is your tradition, but now we are realizing that this culture and tradition is harming women. You will find that for some, in fact, generally in all Gambian societies and in other African communities, FGM is not just about cutting. It's a period where girls are taught what it means to be a woman. So one of the arguments that communities are giving us is that we are taking away that space where women cannot teach their girls how to be a woman. Because when girls are caught, they are kept in a room for a period of 3 weeks to a month where they are educated. This is what it takes to be a woman. You know, this is how you are supposed to look after your husband. It's all reinforcing patriarchy anyway. But in some of the communities that we work with, when women tell us that they want to continue that, we provide the spaces. So one of the things that Will does, the organization I founded, we create safe spaces for women and girls. So we go into these communities where we will offer teenage girls like a 6-week period where they go through a safe space. But we've advanced it a little bit. Instead of saying to girls, this is how you clean for your husband or cook for your husband, we talk about equality. We talk about menstrual hygiene. We talk about bodies and what it means and what are the expectations of being a woman. And that is not just addressing, we are not just taking away the harm of FGM, we are providing this space where women actually learn about gender equality and other issues. So those are the approaches, and we create intergenerational dialogues where we bring older women and younger women to have a conversation. So we are being creative, we are also learning as things go, because as I said, FGM is a deeply rooted practice that is gonna take many more decades to address because it is so complex. So yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? Or is there...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll make it quick. The thing is, you were talking about how you want to educate your sons
Yes.
to be role models and everything, and
Yeah.
to then grow up to be, I guess, in a positive masculinity. Is there anything you're gonna do to spread the word to the world so that men can also get educated and not only women?
Yes, so part of, again, at work level, the project, we do have an aspect called the positive masculinity, where we go into communities, the same way we are creating safe spaces for girls, we create safe spaces for men to talk about. It's like a self-check, a reality check. I think often we don't have that space where women have the opportunity to tell men how they feel about some of their actions. So we create these spaces as well, to talk about, you know, how women feel when they walk past and they're being catcalled by men. But we also provide that opportunity. As I said, most men don't understand FGM, but they would tell you, I will not marry a girl who is not caught. So we provide these spaces where we show them videos of what happens in that room when girls are being caught. Because in their own defense, they don't know anything about a woman who is in court. Men don't even know what part of the woman's body is removed when FGM is performed. So they can't relate. They can't relate. And what you tend to find is that most communities where FGM rates are very high, most of the women would experience the same challenges. So it's easy for that community to associate that with femininity rather than the practice of FGM itself. So what we are providing is evidence. We bring testimonies. As I said to you, one of the ways that FGM has continued is by silencing survivors not to speak about what happened to us. And what we are doing right now at my organization is to create those platforms where women can come and speak up about how FGM has affected us. Trust me, whenever I speak about my experience, there would be a bunch of men who would come and say I'm lying. Forget that there are men who would never know what it feels like to be a survivor of FGM. They would still claim that my story or my reality is not true. So is many other women, but we continue to provide that platform. We do videos, we do audios, we do Facebook Lives, we go on a Twitter space to create that environment where it is my story, it is my reality, and I own my story and I'm going to share it. We are empowering girls to do that because we've been always told that we shouldn't talk about the harm that happened to us. So we continue engaging in those levels.
Okay, I think with that,
I
we
think
Yeah.
I have the last question. So, even if this, well, FGM is a significant issue, given that there are still appalling figures related to this problem, and so therefore imply that there is not enough incentive, do you believe that there is an economic responsibility for the majority or anyone who is privileged enough to educate others and to take a role in mitigating this issue and combating this?
Absolutely. I mean, even within our own communities where FGM is practiced, FGM is strongly tied to child marriage. When girls are caught, their bride price increases. So these are some of the factors why parents continue to cut their girls. When a girl is married off, the groom has to pay, the groom family has to pay. So when girls are caught, their marriage price increases. That also puts them at risk of early marriage. So when you put those girls in that situation, you are not allowing them to realize their full potential to achieve all that. With regards to what others who are in a better position to support, what can be done, there are a lot of charities that work on women's health, women issues in the broader, or specifically on FGM, that looks for support for interventions in our communities. For example, if I want to go to an outreach to meet a community, I have to find a way to get my staff there. If I am not in a position to afford that, I can't reach out to those rural areas. The national prevalence, I've indicated 75% is the national prevalence. There are some communities in Gambia where FGM prevalence is 98%. So you know that in this community, almost every girl is caught. So we know certain communities, and the most rural communities are the ones that have the highest prevalence. So my team, if I want to reach that community without resources, I can't go, I can't reach them. So these are some of the challenges that we look for support around, and I know that this is across many African communities that also advocate against FGM.
Thank you so much.